During the summer of 2018, I experienced a prime example of the extreme multi-interest black ops tactics targeting and sabotaging me through an intricate system of hacking and in real life social engineering that repeats the same patterns of monitoring my private content, my accounts through some sort of military grade spyware, and then interacting with me in ways that are engineered to make me feel like I'm crazy, look like I'm crazy, sabotage me in ways that are plausibly deniable enough that discredit me when I try to describe them without extensive examination. So I was living in an apartment in Ditmas in 2018. I was already experiencing the tells of all my accounts being monitored and hacked, my devices being constantly invaded, possible roommates, colleagues hired to spy on me or troll me. They could be incentivized directly by Scientology, by organized crime, by some fraudulent government watch list I've been placed on, maybe by Scientology, or by like private interests such as the wealthy entertainment industry connected families at the center of my book surrounding a high profile rape suspect, hiring companies like Black Cube and Kroll, or Highgate, or even some, local PI firm that's willing to maybe bend the rules a lot more than a large company with more oversight. So what I'm describing to you, I was just observing it from the inside while it was happening, as if I was living in some sort of twilight zone, unable to really say anything because I'm just like, what is this? I've never lived inside of, a KGB grade multi-interest black ops before. So I had to kind of record it the best I could with my memory and, voice memos while it was happening and put a pin in it for later. But now that all this news is coming out about transnational harassment and, journalists and writers getting government grade spyware installed in their devices, and, the amount of technology that's out there, and Harvey Weinstein's coverage by Ronan Farrow, it's quite plausible. The things that I'm describing do in fact demonstrate that I am not hallucinating when I tell you what I experienced. So in 2018, I had been living for 2 years at a apartment in Ditmas. That summer, I had cobbled together 3 different roles in the Planet Connections Theater Festival, where I was actually earning in total my rent just from acting. I was, so proud of myself and just very stabilized in my, feeling of getting through this period of time where I was getting kind of economically and professionally sabotaged by a series of destabilizing life events that were also linked to my black ops, but I didn't realize it at the time. I was devoted to my professional acting routine, waking up, going jogging, doing my vocals, doing my speech warm-up, running my lines 10 times every day for each role, going to rehearsal, applying for more work. I was like, I'm just set up for success right now for these 3 roles, including a reading of my script, The Handmaid's Dianetics, which at that time I was working on the first episode, which is a solo show, and I had a reading of it at Planet Connections that summer, as well as at the Brick Theater Festival of Lies in Brooklyn. And one day in the summer, I attended a march for immigrant rights across the bridge, and I took a selfie of myself and posted it on Instagram at this march. And I later that day had a meeting with my leaseholders, who were also my roommates, who were going to tell me whether or not they were going to renew my lease. And additionally, on 4 different occasions that year, I was harassed by mobile crisis units, and one time a suicide ambulance that was called to my apartment specifically to disrupt writing deadlines that I had, both for this play and for like a paid writing gig, and all without due process or probable cause. There was absolutely no impetus for sending these mobile crisis units and suicide ambulance to my apartment by any stretch of the imagination. And some of the mobile crisis units had been sent anonymously, and some had been sent by friends who I believe were being fed false information about my condition. You know, I was just working constantly and out and about in the world and like stressed out from getting targeted by a black ops, but it was not, you know, going missing or out of the public eye or lying on the floor, you know, unable to get up and take care of myself. I was just constantly working while having to deal with a multi-interest black ops. So someone may have infiltrated my friend circle and fed them false information about my state and prompted somebody to call these things on my apartment, which I explained to my friends and said, I am not, you know, I'm not suicidal, I'm not self-destructive. I went, you know, to a psych watch, you know, 72-hour watch facility when I got, you know, taken by a suicide ambulance. And even though I was like, I can't, I have a writing deadline, and they were like, we have to, it's a suicide ambulance. I was like, I went with them. I don't know if they're like corrupt EMTs or if they really had to take me, but I did go with them. And when I was there, I sat and, you know, I was observed in a group of people, and I, you know, when they finally called my name, I was like, hey, I'm not suicidal at all. Somebody called this ambulance. My deadline for this writing assignment is ruined. It's really disturbing that I'm here. I really am not suicidal. I never have been. I'm getting harassed by Scientology. I have a play satirizing Scientology that's going up. I was like, it would be in my best interest to be able to go home and work on this deadline, you know. And they did release me, and I understand it's a huge risk, you know, anytime someone might or might not be suicidal, to be able to discern if they're planning to hurt themselves. I was not, and I'm not trying to in any way minimize the risk factor and the unknowns around assessing and assisting suicidal ideation. But in my case, mobile crisis units and suicide ambulance were being weaponized to sabotage me. And that kind of harassment can make somebody become suicidal. So that was my situation. So I was going to head home after taking, you know, a selfie of myself on the bridge after, doing like a march for immigrant rights. And my phone was dying a lot. That summer it was old and battered and probably had spyware on it. So I went to Blue Stockings bookstore and I sat and I charged my phone before I headed home. And there were like two girls sitting next to me having a conversation, like two people sitting next to me having a conversation. And I got on my phone and I was like, oh yeah, I'm being harassed by the Church of Scientology right now. I get weirdly stalked. I think, so-and-so may have gotten some sort of incentive to try to weirdly sabotage me. I don't know if it's like the family of some of the people who are in my book about the high-profile rape suspect, or someone else like, hiring out a smear campaign, or if it's all just Scientology, it's unclear. And a woman in the store approached me and she said, I just overheard you talking about you're getting harassed by Scientology. And she was like, I'm also getting harassed. I think I'm also getting harassed by Scientology. They can like mess with your, your web results and all kinds of stuff. And I was like, that's so interesting. I was like, and she was like, well, what happens to you? And I was like, well, the problem is they sometimes stage interactions with me that look a lot like this one. And the thing is, like, because I've had a lot of weird harassment happen to me, if I'm in a public place and a random person who I don't know appears near me and starts talking about being harassed by Scientology, I have to wonder if they are just like a setup interaction or person like hired to stalk me and try to engage me in conversation so that they can try to discredit me in some way, or sabotage me in some way. So if two people in a random public place are both being spied on by Scientology and they don't know each other, I mean, if they overhear one another talking about getting harassed by Scientology, part of their consciousness has to say, I don't know if this person's a spy or not, or if they're actually getting harassed by Scientology, because there's a lot of spy versus spy versus spy versus spy scenarios happening when you're the target of a multi-interest black ops. And so I was freaked out. I did casually like walk up to the person who was like at the counter, and I was like, I don't know if that person stalked me to the store by GPS just now, because stuff like that happens to me a lot. And then I was just like, I don't know why I'm telling you this, but I just don't know. And then I left. Like I went back to my apartment in Ditmas, and the leaseholder / roommates were like, we're deciding we're not gonna renew the lease, and the stuff about you getting kind of harassed by these mobile crisis units, like that's not really our problem. And in that moment, I really felt that what happened was this woman did stalk me to Blue Stockings, and she did it because I was being basically punished for taking a selfie of myself at the immigration rights march, and whoever hired her out, which was probably Scientology, wanted to create a sense that I was a hypocritical asshole for taking a selfie of myself at an immigration rights march, and then spending a small amount of time talking to this woman at Blue Stockings, and then going to the person behind the counter and saying, hey, I don't know if this woman stalked me. Maybe she did or didn't. I'm just letting you know. And then leaving. When in fact, my concerns were real. I was willing to accept that I was wrong. I didn't weaponize my concerns. And she has every right to also wonder if I was in fact stalking her to the store, to have that weird conversation in her earshot. And she has every right to go to the person at the counter and say, that woman may have stalked me. So that's the world we live in. And my roommate's ending my lease was a really terribly timed, and I'm guessing planned, coordinated sabotage with Planet Connections Theater Festival to destroy my housing stability, just as I was gaining momentum with these acting roles and getting work, and forcing me to have to scramble to find a place when I was really, really instilled with learned helplessness by the fact that this woman could stalk me and then exert a sense of feeling like I would be karmically punished by my roommates for not interacting with her properly, and, you know, sitting there for an hour and talking with her and not being worried she was a spy. It was very clearly set up to create a false karmic sense of association that I deserved to lose my lease because of the way I interacted with this woman. So that's, you know, civil conspiracy and a RICO Act violation to basically stalk someone and have seemingly unrelated interactions and then sabotage that person in their housing or job to try to create a sense that they karmically pulled in this bad thing happening to them because they didn't treat this random person who stalked them in you know, according to some like oppressive social credit system model. So my guess is Scientology or the Cargman and Brooks syndicate, or some really weird corrupt government harassment campaign, possibly transnational government harassment campaign, or organized crime, you know, wanted me to have some meltdown about, you know, immigrants stalking me to bookstores so that, you know, I lose my lease, you know, right after I attend a march for immigration rights or something. But this harassment campaign towards me may be fronting with specific identities to try to make me look like an adversary towards these identities. But this harassment campaign has no identity, no soul, no values. The one objective is to harass me. If I was living in a community of Nazis and white supremacists, this Black Ops would be trying to discredit me in a community of Nazis and white supremacists. Because I happen to be in New York City, because I happen to have work that, you know, is written in a liberal context and with regards to issues of justice in relation to identities and intersectionality in some of my work. This Black Ops is trying to discredit me to that very audience. So one day this Black Ops may hire someone to spread rumors about me that I'm, you know, paranoid about immigrants and liberals sabotaging my housing because I'm, writing work that is in favor of that audience in certain situations. But, if I was living in the middle of the Bible Belt among, neo-Nazis, I guarantee you this black ops would be spreading rumors that I'm not a devoted neo-Nazi and that I'm secretly donating money to Black Lives Matter or something like that. So if you get what I'm saying, this black ops is like a mirror ball puzzle designed by the KGB. There is no center morally or identity wise, unless it does have some ties to a specific organization, but whatever those ties are being concealed. And the only goal of this black ops is to basically discredit me, make me feel insane, and make me look insane while sabotaging my material resources. So every interaction with my black ops is just basically a dismissible episode of the Twilight Zone. And I'm taking meetings to pitch an episodic series on Netflix. So let's just please keep that in mind. Please don't try to frame this as me having weird paranoia about specific demographics. I am some of those demographics. So I go home, the leaseholders / roommates who have, engaged in a kind of a weird, social credit system thing, that's probably just fronting for Scientology or someone. They're like, yeah, we, and I was like, could I at least stay maybe another month past the lease, because it's really, really hard for me to look for housing right now. And I was internally just really feeling that learned helplessness that was intended, by this sense that a random woman stalking me can exert this whole karmic, creepy fairy tale, you weren't nice to the woman that came to your door, so now you're losing your lease, harassment campaign. It was really making me feel, oh my God, they have this total power over me. I'm living in a surveillance web of psychopaths stalking me. I'm not even going to be able to find a home. So it wasn't just as simple as, oh yeah, your lease is ending, find another. I'm also internally serious learned helplessness, because I'm surrounded by a bizarre KGB Black Mirror hacking social engineering hybrid that probably costs hundreds of dollars to maintain. So I'm okay, because there's nothing I can do. Obviously, if they tell me we're not letting you re-sign the lease at the end of September, there's nothing I can do. So I'm this destabilizes me when I'm working on, really giving it my all to these shows that I'm in, and I know that was the intention, and I know it was coordinated with Glory Cadogan running Planet Connections, who was part of this bizarre long game attempt to really, really befriend me, learn about me, and then slowly over time try to corrode my work, my reputation, my resources with this long game black ops. I don't know who Glory works on behalf of or with, whether she just gets incentivized by random organized crime leaders and powerful families like the Cargman, Brooks, Kaplan, and Kopelman families, who are connected to the Oscar-winning rape suspect in my book, who have an agenda to blackball me. Or, you know, if she's connected to some weird transnational harassment campaign, or if she's just getting paid off by the Church of Scientology, or if she's getting misled by some like PI or corrupt law enforcement person who's like falsely framing me on some sort of like fraudulent criminal watch list. I do not know. But this was the purpose of this thing with the leaseholders, was to sabotage my chances of giving my best performance and getting like awards at the festival, and being able to leverage that. And that's really what was going on, just harassment to sabotage my performance in these plays and the reading of my show, and make it so I didn't give my very best performance and really get in consideration for awards and more opportunities that would have come from me giving my absolute best performance. I was living in terror from this bizarre harassment, you know, pseudo-social credit system style black ops being directed towards me. So it was really horrifying. It was really meant to put me in like total laboratory rodent absolute terror mode. And the people doing this are sick psychopaths who need to be in like a serious, you know, rehabilitation center at best, prison, club fed, whatever incarceral system would keep them out of the general population and possibly rehabilitate their psychopathic criminal behavior towards me, and I'm sure others. This sounds crazy and I sound like such an asshole, but you've got to understand, this is not an acceptable framework. So I'm exempt from any, you know, mildly unpleasant responses that I'm giving here. So, like, I mean, for all I know, this could literally be designed by like Putin or the Kremlin or something. So I schedule my move out of this apartment for a Sunday at the very end of September. And I scheduled my move for like the very end of August, the last day in August. I schedule it very, very precisely. I have like very little funds, so I book a storage space at a CubeSmart down the street from the apartment where I'm living. And I featured a CubeSmart in a video that I made about a Scientology themed satirical character the summer prior as part of like a performance fellowship I was in. And at this CubeSmart where I'd booked a storage spot, the receptionist gave me a pamphlet that had like a free promotion where I could book movers from a super move for 2 hours. And I scheduled that promotion into my very, very tight morning move into the storage spot down the street on a Sunday. everything was scheduled precisely. I had booked a temporary sublet for the month of September. That was all I could find in the time that I had. And I had like my little amount of money budgeted for the move, for the tip, and, you know, paid to the storage spot, and, you know, paid for the sublet. And the move was going to be really simple. The only things that I wasn't able to carry myself were like a big wardrobe and a big desk. The rest, like, I could help carry. And I booked the moving truck through a super move, but I hired a mover from a separate company that I knew. And the movers in the truck, like the moving truck driver showed up 1 hour earlier than they were supposed to. And I had texted the dispatcher and confirmed it verbally on the phone, but I made the mistake of not texting a confirmed time to have it in writing. So the moving truck showed up 1 hour earlier than it was supposed to. And I said, oh, you're an hour early. The dispatcher said you were going to be here 1 hour from now. But I think we can still get it done. The mover that I hired is not coming for another hour because you're early. But that's okay because I've got the truck for 2 hours, and it's gonna take like 20 minutes to load the stuff in the truck, and then the drive to the storage spot is like 10 minutes. And then once you unload it at the storage spot, I can just take it on myself on a cart, you know, after you get the desk and the closet in. So we're still good even though you're an hour early. And, you know, they were like, what? Like, no, like, we'll do the moving. I was like, no, I just booked the truck with you. I've already got the other mover coming. And, you know, the driver had brought a second person. I think he was trying to get them both hired to move. And I said, no, I just booked the truck, not the movers with your company. I'm bringing another person to help me move. And they were like, and I was like, you know, I know you're an hour early. Do you need to use the restroom or have any water or anything from inside? And they were like, no, we'll wait. Like, right away, the driver was very, very, like, trying to escalate some sort of conflict or argument, and make it, you know, make it seem like I was wrong about the time, you know, that I was committing a huge faux pas, but there was nothing I had done, and my reactions were all very, very not engaging any kind of escalation. It was just, you know, I was very nice, and I said, no, I just booked for 2 hours, just the truck. The other mover's coming. I already told the dispatcher, and the dispatcher actually confirmed with me last night that you were supposed to be here, you know, an hour later than you are now. So you are early, but I think we can still get it done in just 2 hours, and you can leave an hour earlier than you were supposed to. So additionally, right before the movers came, my roommates, and, you know, 2 of the roommates were also this older couple that was a leaseholder, they like rushed out of the scene so that the apartment would be empty, with my phone being what it was, like near death, and the battery just draining in minutes, or like, you know, in a couple hours. And I think that was on purpose so that there would be no witnesses. the moving truck driver was like, okay, well, wait. And so I start carrying some of my own boxes to the truck in the meantime, just by myself, while I wait for this one mover who's gonna help me carry like the big pieces of furniture. And like the guy driving the moving truck is like, you know what? Here, I wanna call my dispatcher. And I was like, okay, sure, we can call your dispatcher. He's like, you know what? Why don't you call your mover and tell him to meet you at the storage space, because we don't want to sit here waiting. We're just gonna carry the stuff for you. And I was like, I don't want to make you carry the stuff because I didn't hire you guys. I already am paying this other mover. Like, so we can't switch it up like this last minute. He's like, you know what, call your mover, I'll call my dispatcher. I was like, okay. He was like, tell the dispatcher, he's like, tell your mover to meet us at the storage space. I was like, okay, fine, I'll do exactly what this guy says. I call the mover who's on their way, and I was like, listen, this moving truck driver showed up an hour early. He's getting annoyed, and I don't know, he's saying he just wants to get the stuff out and then meet you at the storage space instead of waiting, even though he's the one who's an hour early. And while I'm on the phone with the mover, the guy's like, here, talk to my dispatcher. He's trying to hand me the phone while I'm making the phone call that he asked me to make. So he's clearly trying to set up confusion intentionally so he can stage some hissy fit, some sabotage or fiasco with no witnesses around. And I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm on the phone with this guy. And now they're really trying to get me to freak out and burst into tears or something. And I'm just like, listen, you told me to call this guy. And so I'm talking to the mover that I hired, and he's like, okay, I'll meet you at the storage spot. So then I'm like, okay, I can talk to your dispatcher. And the driver's like, they hung up already. You missed the call. So this guy is very clearly pulling like a mafia style Scientology Black Ops fiasco. He's clearly not trying to help me in any way. He's clearly trying to sabotage the whole move. I mean, obviously that's what he's doing. Nobody acts like that unless even in a bad romantic relationship, nobody, if somebody's acting like that, they're not trying to find solutions. They're just trying to blow up the whole thing so they can walk away and say it was your fault. Like, clearly nobody acts like that in any kind of professional exchange anywhere, unless they're trying to sabotage it or they have serious issues going on. But even if you have serious issues going on, you're going to hold it together to not sabotage it to the degree that this guy was sabotaging the whole very simple interaction. So I was like, listen, I asked the mover, just like you told me, to come meet us at the storage spot because you want to leave an hour earlier because you showed up an hour earlier. So he did not let me talk to his dispatcher. He staged the phone call so that I would miss the opportunity to talk to his dispatcher. And now he's gotten me to ask the mover to meet us at the storage spot, which is exactly what I did not want to do, change these plans last minute. That's nuts. The storage spot is, 10 minutes away, but so this guy's taken the reins and he's steering us into the ditch. His other friend who's with him is like, trying to touch my arm. He's like, listen, calm down, which is obviously he's trying to freak me out as well. and is, a psychopathic, whether he's psychopathic by nature or psychopathic by hire, he is psychopathic in that moment. And this mover, right? The driver is like, okay, so why won't you let us come into your house to carry the stuff? He's like, what is it because of the color of our skin? And I was like, what are you talking about? Like, half an hour ago, I just invited you to go in and use the restroom and grab a glass of water if you needed it. I never said I had a problem with you going into the apartment. I just don't want you to move furniture that I didn't hire your company to move. I want to wait for the mover I'm bringing in so that you're only doing the work that you're paid for. I only hired your company to drive. I don't want to ask you to do anything extra, and I'm going to tip you and stuff, but this is a really tight budget move. I don't want to take advantage of anybody. I already called another mover. But the guy is clearly trying so hard to stage a full-blown freak out, and he's like, you know what? Fuck this. He runs over to the truck, he throws he takes my boxes, he puts them on the grass, and drives off. My demeanor was just like it is now, like way too calm, because I'm trying to compensate for this absolute blatant soap opera being intentionally staged before my eyes as I watch on in disbelief. So that point, I'm a little upset. I have my eyes are definitely welling up in tears, but I'm still keeping cool and doing the job. And I call the mover, who I've just like I knew I shouldn't have done, but this asshole mover just managed to persuade me and then prove me right that he was just trying to stage a complete sabotage. I called the guy coming over to help move, and I was like, listen, this driver just staged a full-blown freak out. He basically sabotaged the move, and I am so sorry. I don't know what to do, because he basically showed up early. He tried to create a bunch of confusion to sabotage the move. He told me to ask you to go to a different location. And then even though I did everything he requested, he staged a total fake conflict that was purely of his own invention, and then drove away and left my stuff on the grass, and I don't know what to do, and I have to go to work in like an hour and a half. I am so sorry. I have to call off the move, and I've wasted your time. I'm so sorry. And then on top of that, now all my stuff is sitting in the living room of the apartment that I had agreed with. Like, it had been moved into the living room for the movers to get all packed up. And now, my leaseholders and roommates get to say, like, oh my God, this terrible person is just leaving her stuff in our living room. And I had, I'd scheduled this move for this Sunday, but I was booked up throughout the week with like work and stuff. And I had to like drain my bank account hundreds and hundreds of dollars into the negative, paying cabs to move my stuff piecemeal to the storage spot, and this was a major sabotage because I only had a sublet for a month. And during that sublet, I was supposed to be looking for a long-term spot. So now I've been, not only my time wasted, not only financial abuse, not only harassment by these moving truck company employees, but really trying to make me feel so futile and so helpless that this black ops has utter dominion over the outcome of my life and they will get me no matter what I do. So it's not just like you're going along in your normal state of psychological safety and something unfortunate happens. It's like I feel like some horrible Silence of the Lambs person is like keeping me in a hole and like torturing me from above at their whim. So it's a real attempt to put me in a horrible psychological state of total learned helplessness. And it's working. I do, in my many trips to the storage spot, as I'm desperately trying to get my shit out of these former leaseholders / roommates who are in on this weird harassment social credit campaign, living room, I go to the receptionist, Brandy, who recommended the Supermove promotion to me, who may have also been in on it, because her demeanor towards me was like a little weird, like a little like Mulholland Drive old lady in the back of the cab laughing at Naomi Watts's character before she gets like sacrificed in Hollywood vibe. So I'm like, I go to Brandy and I'm like, listen, this thing happened with a Supermove where they demonstrated some sort of like actively planned sabotage of my move. He basically showed up an hour early, completely fabricated a one-sided conflict, freaked out, drove away, left my stuff on the lawn, and it resulted in absolute financial havoc for me for the week or so after that I had to spend moving out piecemeal in cabs. And she was like, I'll make a note of it. And it wasn't even a nice I'll make a note of it. It was like a kind of like secretly maliciously dismissive I'll make a note of it. Like not a normal response. Even if she couldn't have done anything to help me, it was a weird kind of response. And again, this is not to minimize other people's problems that they're going through, but this is a real harassment campaign towards me. And it is being done to make me look delusional, to make me look in some way deserving of it, to make me look, like I'm just an asshole and people do stuff like this to me because I'm actually really unprofessional or doing something to them that's inviting this. This is a really insidious, like intricate psychological warfare campaign, trying to create that perception both in myself and others, but I am being like harassed by an elaborate black ops that costs hundreds of thousands of dollars to maintain. So this person probably had some agenda of their own. I don't know if she was like actively hired to participate in the black ops sabotage of my move, but there was a very clear like monitoring of my bank accounts by some spyware or PI who'd hacked my passwords and knew, how much I had in my bank account, knew that I was budgeting this move on a shoestring, knew that I had to go to work in a few hours, knew that it would throw me into absolute financial chaos, if this move I'd scheduled got sabotaged in any way. And I know that Glory Cadigan, running the Planet Connections Festival, was involved in helping to orchestrate this while trying to seem like a totally separate person who was an advocate, because they're getting like career incentive to like engage with me in a way that seems like they do not have an agenda to allow me to be engulfed by like a multi-interest Black Ops campaign, but they are getting like implicit and possibly also explicit incentive to allow what happened to me to happen to me. And they're trying to make it seem like there is a moral impetus, and there is not. So when everyone involved in this Black Ops campaign is like investigated and questioned and interrogated, Glory Cadigan is going to have a role to play as a witness of how this was conducted towards me, and whether she was blackmailed or incentivized or morally misled, or simply just hired for pay, or offered some sort of career payoff, will hopefully kind of be cleared up. If there's if there's another solid raid of like the files for whoever's doing this. But again, this harassment campaign is designed to be plausibly deniable. So if the Church of Scientology or someone is doing this, they probably know how to do it without leaving a paper trail this time. After the Church of Scientology got raided for Operation Snow White, when they infiltrated all those government agencies, I think they probably figured out how to not leave a paper trail. The CIA learned long ago never to leave a paper trail. They got rid of most of the files when Sidney Gottlieb went on trial, as per, Stephen Kinzer's Poisoner-in-Chief. Certainly organized criminals have figured out how not to leave a paper trail for a very, very long time. And hackers and social engineering, they know how to maintain plausible deniability with their victims, but the extensive training and digital footprint required for that sort of thing might be a little more difficult to totally erase. So here I am, put in the state of like a hunted field mouse in terms of my sense of safety. Meanwhile, Celeste Arias, Chloe Feynman, other people who were intended to receive the benefits of my getting Black Ops are getting their careers, boosted across town here in the summer of 2018. I'm getting just like, I'm getting Watership Down style harassed, the Secrets of Nim style harassed, in this move. And like, this is very similar to what Teresa Duncan and Jeremy Blake experienced in the Vanity Fair's golden suicide harassment, and what you read about in Carmen Llewellyn's Gawker article, where she describes her phone getting hacked and turned into a surveillance device, and then people having weird interactions around her as psychological warfare. But what's interesting about Jeremy Blake, Teresa Duncan, Carmen Llewellyn's harassment is, you know, Jeremy Blake and Teresa Duncan were never in Scientology. And the article in Vanity Fair mentions that they said, you know, they told Beck, "We'll help you leave the church," and that's why they got harassed. But the thing that occurs to me is, you know, Jeremy Blake, Teresa Duncan were never in the church. Usually the church reserves that level of harassment only for people who were in it, so that they just make you look crazy if you leave, but the rest of the world doesn't understand the extent of harassment you're experiencing. Like if you look at Alex Timbers, who did Very Merry Scientology Christmas Pageant at New York Theater Workshop, he got a big letter from a lawyer that actually served as great PR for him while he was at New York Theater Workshop doing that show. He's friends with the Cargman family and the Kopelman, you know, he's friends with the Cargman family. I think Ari Kopelman might be Jill Cargman's dad. So he's not getting this harassment. His career's, you know, doing fine. He's hired, you know, Chloe Feynman. He's hired Nick Kroll, whose dad owns the billion-dollar surveillance company that Harvey Weinstein hired to harass, you know, people who write books about him. So maybe Teresa Duncan and Jeremy Blake were a frame-up job by some surveillance company that is willing to sacrifice them, but not going after Alex Timbers. So that's interesting. Also, the thing that occurs to me, Teresa Blake and Jeremy Duncan's story of telling Beck, "We'll help you leave Scientology." The reality is that Scientology, you know, artists and actors, even I'm sure Tom Cruise and like Juliette Lewis, probably have people say shit to them about Scientology all the time that they just let roll off their back. When I was in acting school, I had people say very, you know, hostile things kind of as an excuse to take a dig into me because I was doing really well. And I've had people say very compassionate things about Scientology to me where they're like, you know, "We'll help you out. I know," you know, I had people in school say, you know, "I have friends back home who've gotten kicked out of their family because of Scientology, like, we can help you." And I was defensive in both, like, it made me kind of just hide the fact that I was, you know, involved in Scientology when people would say that shit to me in school. But it didn't, not, the people who would say that to me are not getting targeted by a severe black ops right now. And some of those people were very, very connected to famous Hollywood, you know, parents or friends or whatever. Like, they were in the acting program with me and their parents, like, were big deals and, you know, they were big deals. Like, so that they didn't get that Vanity Fair golden suicides style harassment that Teresa Duncan and Jeremy Blake did. It's possible Teresa Duncan and Jeremy Blake pissed off some other kind of syndicate prior to their downfall, and then somebody kind of maneuvered them into the path of some Scientology narrative so that when they got targeted by a black ops, people would blame Scientology or make, you know, but they could have pissed off some organized criminal situation. They could have pissed off somebody sociopathic who just was willing to hire out Black Cube and Kroll to take them down. And I'm not saying, you know, Scientology hasn't performed horrible spy campaigns. Obviously, there's the Paulette Cooper, Unbreakable Miss Lovely. But the thing is, I just want to know every single person who's involved in what spy campaign and at what points they're involved, because the more we understand who's a lot allied with who's got what motives and agendas, who's getting what incentive, who's getting spared and who's getting sacrificed, we have a better idea of the different human components that are guiding what's going on here, you know, because like Chloe Feynman's family could be friends with whoever owns the PI firm who, you know, Scientology hires, and even if Scientology says, hey, we're going to investigate Chloe Feynman, you know, maybe the PI is going to go leniently more on her if they're friends with like her dad or something, you know what I mean? Like, if she's a castmate with Nick Kroll on Saturday Night Live, and you know, Joseph Brooks and Sophie Cargman's family is hiring Nick Kroll's dad to investigate my book, you know, and they say, well, you know what? Let's just go ahead and get her on Scientology's blacklist too. You know, I mean, there's just a lot going on here. And we just need to make sure my career damage is reversed and nobody is reaping the benefits of the fact that they tried to literally bury me 6 feet in the ground, like career wise. That's not happening. So there you go. This little weird just moving situation in and of itself demonstrates the utter insanity that's happening to me. And I think some of the people were like, let's just do this to Joyce and like let Chloe Feynman and Celeste Arias and other people who are beneficiaries of Joyce's scapegoating like get like a real career boost while we're just like, you know, burying Joyce with this black ops. So, you know, that's just one possibility, but a very viable one. And you know, I spent my month in this sublet feeling like, you know, when's the piano gonna drop on me? You know, like when is the cartoon anvil gonna fall on me? It really was just like that. You know, it was just like a cartoon level of me being hunted by bizarre, elaborate contraptions. And also make it appear very, very slowly over time that I was just going insane of my own accord, so that even my story of persecution would be delegitimized. So going back to Vanity Fair's The Golden Suicides, that's why we want to consider, other than the 0.0001% that Jeremy Blake and Teresa Duncan were like spies who faked their own death to draw attention to the Scientology narrative, which I highly doubt, we need to consider who would have had an agenda to get Teresa Blake and Jeremy, you know, Teresa Duncan and Jeremy Blake, maybe inside of this whole black ops industry, you know, and who were they protecting and why Teresa Duncan and Jeremy Blake? Because I have people that I went to school with. I'm sure Juliette Lewis and Beck and Tom Cruise and Giovanni Ribisi have had lots of people over the years go up to them and say, hey, I'll help you get out of Scientology. Hey, you know, your religion's shit. And they have not put those people on a blacklist. I'm sure Chloe Feynman has people say that stuff to her, and I bet you she doesn't, you know, put these people on some kind of kill list. And even if Scientology is putting these people on some kind of kill list, I'm sure Chloe Feynman does not know that that's what's going on. But even so, Scientology's not putting everybody on this bizarre black ops list. It's only happening to some people. Why Teresa Duncan and Jeremy Blake? Like, is some other organized criminal situation involved doing this that wants to use Scientology as a front? Is some government trying to develop a cognitive warfare technique and they're using Scientology as an umbrella? Is it, again, some individual psychopath in Hollywood who had it out for this couple and wanted to, let people just assume it was Scientology? What's going on here? Is this Black Ops campaign that's happening towards me higher? Is this like a special menu item at a specific company like Black Cube, that you pay a certain amount of money for? Or can the mob also pull it off? Can the government pull it off? Like, is it a technique that all the powerful organizations know how to do? Or is this like, Joe who works at Black Cube's specialty skill? That's a question I have as well. So, yeah, like, the person who I went to school with who said, hey, I'll help you leave Scientology. I know someone back home in LA who got kicked out of their family, who, for not wanting to do Scientology, and I'll help you. The person who said that to me had very powerful, influential parents in the industry, and she only got, favoritism from some teachers who actually participated in blackballing me. So even though I, in that moment, was like, no, I don't need you to help me get out of Scientology. I like it. My parents don't like it. I do. Like, this person didn't get targeted. But why did Jeremy Blake and Teresa Duncan get targeted for offering to take Beck out? So that is very interesting. Obviously, being against Scientology is not the only factor getting somebody targeted by a Black Ops here. Somebody may be trying to influence Scientology's fair game policy for exterior agendas that may be tied to any number of interests here. But describing this insane moving day fiasco that happened to me is just one tiny example of the elaborate human rights violations designed to be completely plausibly deniable that are happening to me right now. And I think because I'm in a civilized, dense, urban environment, when that happened to me, they can't really do much more than this plausibly deniable harassment. If I was, in a more unregulated environment and maybe less visible, they may try to get me accidentally hit by a bus or, accidentally hit by like an electric bike, or accidentally shot by walking, 2 feet through a hunting ground. You know what I mean? But I think if anything blatant happens to me, even an accident, I think it's going to be fairly obvious that it was not. So instead, what's going on here is I'm getting targeted with a really, really long game harassment, discrediting, sabotage campaign that is trying to make it look like I'm just dropping the ball. I'm just losing my edge. I'm just, bitter that this didn't work out, but that is not what is happening. Like, these people are highly engineered and interrogating like Glory Cadogan and these roommates I lived with in Ditmas and the weird people who befriended me through like Emma DeCourcy, and Julia Steele Allen and, Stacey Ann Price. It is going to be really key in addition to raiding the church, because there's a lot of different interests trying to discredit and sabotage me right now and make sure I don't have a career and don't have like book sales and Broadway roles and like pay, you know, for my work as an artist, and just look like I kind of fizzled out and lost my professionalism. And we're not doing that. The Golden Suicides case with Teresa Duncan and Jeremy Blake needs to be re-examined. Every single detail and every single person involved needs to be questioned. And, you know, if they don't know anything, or if they're just plausibly deniable enough to leave no conclusion either way, then that's the only assessment that can be made. But I guarantee you that their decline was not simply a matter of a folie à deux over time. It was a real intended cumulative sabotage attempt. And, you know, I've got multi-interest black ops directed towards me, so I don't have to, you know, be the mouthpiece for any one interest myself. I'm forced to play the diplomat, and that can't be held against me until this entire black ops towards me is resolved and we understand exactly what, you know, people did to play a part in it. Because Scientology as an organization is just one component of a larger, more complex strategy that some parties are like taking advantage of, and, you know, they'll use and play Scientology as a chess piece, just like they will with anything else in this world, which is like hugely Machiavellian. So like I would also venture to say that like probably throughout my upbringing in school, I was maneuvered to be someone that artists and teachers could falsely profile so that they could advance other students and artists at my expense in like certain political climates where the FBI starts probing into the arts community like they did in the McCarthy era. I think maybe I could have been designated as a fall person, where they can say, look at that crazy Scientologist, when they're actually like secretly bullying and harassing me and sabotaging me to kind of set me up to falsely profile. So I think over time, I did have certain teachers who were part of some clandestine effort to designate me as a fall person so that they could advance and protect other artists that served their specific agenda. And we are not doing that. I think maybe Todd Thaler got some sort of weird FBI incentive, or maybe he was blackmailed, you know, kind of like Woody Allen's The Front. I think he got some kind of incentive to participate in, you know, trying to sabotage my acting career while I was in school and try to shift the curriculum to sabotage my explicit goal of graduating with an agent, which would have been very feasible, and many students did that at the school. But I think Todd Thaler specifically, and a number of other teachers, but Todd Thaler has very Hollywood connection. I think the FBI, you know, in their not so secret war with Scientology, persuaded Todd Thaler to sabotage my trajectory of graduating with an agent towards the end of school. So I hate, I'm really the last person who wants to be saying any of this. When I was in Scientology, I wasn't like putting my teachers on SP lists for not liking me at all. I was a very engaged student. I thought the most of my teachers, I saw them as, just like, I totally trusted like everything about my, my immersion into these acting, exercises and I loved being in class and being with, talking to my teachers and doing whatever work to prove myself that I possibly could. I wasn't set up with maybe the best financial support or family support to be like what I was truly capable of, but I definitely did prove myself as someone who was like employable and ready to get an agent and work. And I was weirdly and actively put on some sort of weird, maybe FBI list that incentivized Todd Thaler, Kathleen Turner, Jill Kargman, and others to engage in a very complex black ops to ruin my intended trajectory of graduating with an agent. And it was very much, like a Woody Allen, The Front style thing. I can't speak for Woody Allen's crimes or character, but I am exempt from, anything he's done if I have to watch his movie, for free on YouTube to glean, some cultural information about what it was like to be targeted by the FBI as an artist during the McCarthy era. The FBI doesn't just target liberal groups, it targets, religious extremist fringe groups, it targets activist groups, and there are many casualties and many innocent people in the process. So they didn't put Chloe Fineman on some list, and Celeste Arias was part of a weird sabotage that happened towards me, at Tisch, and I don't know if Celeste Arias was working for the FBI or for Scientology or getting career support on behalf of one of those organizations. But she had a really weird attachment in this as well. That was just a bizarre thing that has to be addressed in another story. But, these very highbrow people are involved in a black ops towards me, and they're trying to appear completely separate from this really, really mafia style harassment that will happen towards me, like what I described with the movers. But they're absolutely connected, and they're being instructed by some sort of handler on a need-to-know basis. And these powerful people like Todd Thaler and Kathleen Turner, maybe they just followed what the FBI made them do so that I would get turned into unconsenting bait, so that the FBI could then spy on any fair game tactics being used against me. But I'm not here to be cut up for bait, and not paid for it. The people who sabotaged my acting career, for the FBI or whoever, have no excuses, and they're not going to lock me out of the industry, and I'm not going to be free bait for the FBI. I hope people understand that. Celeste Arias and Kathleen Turner and Todd Thaler are welcome to go be bait themselves. I'm getting my career back.